So I've tried a lot of modelers, from budget things like the Mua GE and the Hoton Ampero, up to more premium offerings like the Fractal FM3 and the Line 6 Helix. This is my first time checking out the Quad Cortex by Neural DSP. I've maybe spent a few hours with the unit outside of this video just to get my bearings, but this is still very much my first impressions. Quick disclaimer before I get into the video, this is a used unit. I got it at a pretty heavy discount because it has a broken MIDI port. While this isn't a sponsored video, I do have Tom and affiliate links in the description box down below if you do want to pick up a Quad Cortex for yourself. Now I'm going to pepper in a few playthroughs of the factory presets throughout this video just to break things up a bit, but I will get into dialing in my own preset later on. I'm going to assume you're deep enough into the rabbit hole already to know generally what the Quad Cortex is and what it does. I bought it as an alternative unit to my Fractal FM3, partially so that I can do content like this, but also so that I can generally get a better scope of the current state of modelling. With the release of the Helix Stadium rapidly approaching, it felt like a great time to get into the Quad Cortex and see what it's all about. Now this video is going to be a general overview going over a bunch of different features, taking a quick zoomed out look at a lot of different things that this unit has to offer. I will likely follow up with some deeper content in the future, so let me know in the comments section down below what you would like to see. I'm going to start by going through some of these stock presets, mainly the first couple banks, just to get a general idea of how it sounds. This is something I like to do with every modeler, as it gives you a good sense of what to expect from the unit and how they sort of intended you to use it. The first preset in the unit is the Brit 2203. Let's check out the Brit Plex 100 normal as well. Let's see what the US TWN is all about. We can scroll through the banks by pressing the buttons, and that'll take us to the second bank, so let's check out this TM45. Also, one that I'm particularly curious about before we move on is the Solo 100 Lead. I'm definitely enjoying that Solo 100 Lead tone. Now, one thing I will say is that all of the presets kind of feel like they've been catered more towards modern players. The drive presets have doublers and transpose functions, and the clean presets have big, wet ambience. Speaking of the assignments and stuff, we'll go back into the 2203 preset and see what else it's got going on. As with many things in the Quad Cortex, there are multiple different ways to go about what we want to do here. I want to switch over from the preset mode over into the scenes mode, and we can either do that by tapping the text in the top corner, or we can actually use the side buttons. We can then see all the different screens by swiping up at the bottom of the unit. So this British 2203 scene is the default scene, but let's switch over and check out some of the pedal scenes, like the Brit Governor and the Rodent Drive. can also switch over to the stomp box view and we'll check out what they've assigned to the stomps in this preset. You'll see we've got that rodent drive, so I'll turn that off for a second and we'll engage the transpose feature instead. That has got to be one of my favourite pitch blocks I've tried in any modeler. This feels super responsive. So for the stock presets, I would say that there are a lot of great sounds to be had. One thing I did notice is that there is a significant lag when you change presets. This sort of forces you to use scene mode unless you're between songs, for instance. Yeah, so you really want to build everything into one preset if you can, but thankfully this device has so much DSP that that's not too much of a problem. Now, I do think I am going to build a preset of my own here, just so that we get a general idea of what it's like to actually function with the unit. I really want to keep this simple, so I'm going to go for amp, cab, and a couple of effects either side. It's all super intuitive. You tap the preset and it pulls up your preset menu. You can tap into your presets and then you can just find a blank block. You can tap any of the empty spaces on there and it will pull up the block library, so you can actually go through and just add anything. We'll go for an amp. I think I want a Friedman of some sort, so that's going to be under F. We'll go for the Freeman 100 rhythm. We'll also add a cab. I think I'm going to go for the 4x12 Engel cab because I found myself quite liking that one. You can open up any of the blocks just by tapping on them and it gives you access to all of the parameters. So for this cab block, I think I want to swap out the 160 for a 421 microphone. So this is the sound we've got just as a bass, amp and cab sound. Let's dial that amp in a little bit and then we'll start adding on some effects. So we've now got the amp and cab dialed in, and you'll notice that I used a combination of swiping the actual controls on the screen and using the foot switches, which you can turn as knobs. I do really like that feature, but it can be quite confusing knowing what's assigned to which foot switch. I'm sure that's something that will just come naturally in time though. As for the effects in this one, I think I want to add a boost first, so we'll go into the overdrive section. I don't want to go for the green 808 because it's a little bit overdone, so let's go for the Vemural Ray instead, which is based on the Vemuram. I'll bypass that one for now so that we can dial in some delay and reverb on this as well. So I'm keeping the effects super simple there. I've just got the plate lush, reverb, and the analog delay in stereo, with a little bit of ping pong as well, so we get some more stereo width. We'll hear what this is like, and I'll kick on the drive about halfway through. Now this patch is a touch noisy, so I am going to add a noise gate. I really like that it's sidechained to the input, so it's sort of like a keyed gate that you might get with something like the 14 Zool. Let's open up the block and set the source to follow input, and then actually on the main menu we can drag and hold it and place it after the cabinet. Definitely really helps to clean up the sound. One thing I actually found pretty difficult was monitoring the output levels of your preset. You have to hold the multi out to show your output level, but then you have to go back into the amp block if you would like to change the levels. I found myself monitoring on the desktop instead so that I can actually leave the unit free. There are many times that it feels like this unit needs to have two screens, stuff like monitoring and tweaking at the same time, or stuff like seeing the scenes and also seeing what they're doing to your preset. That's where the desktop editor really comes in handy for me, because I can just leave that up and see what it's doing. One thing that really caught me out was auditioning blocks. So for instance, if I wanted to swap out this Vemur array for the 808 that we spoke about before, let's do that for a second. Say I was happy with that, I would expect to just be able to tap out of it and then tweak it, but that actually reverts the block back. So what you have to do instead is you have to go through the list, you have to pick it, and then you have to click the tick in the top right hand corner. It's just a little bit of a workflow thing that I will get used to as I start to use this unit, but it has caught me out multiple times already. A big reason why people like the Quad Cortex platform is its ability to both load and take captures of things like pedals and amps. Personally, I'm not huge on the capture workflow. I tend to work with models of real amps instead, so that you can sort of tweak them however you like them, rather than relying on someone else's settings, which will then be a snapshot in the unit. I do have the ML SoundLab Essentials capture pack loaded up on this unit, so that I can give you an example of what the captures are doing. Full disclosure here, I do work for ML SoundLab, so take this however you want. I'll do a quick A/B shootout between a capture of the Recto and the actual Recto model in the unit. So we'll start by hearing the model and then we'll switch over to the capture. There are so many reasons why the model in the unit may sound different from a capture, down to things like the actual amp variances themselves, different models of the amplifier, different capturing techniques, all sorts of different things can go into it, but it means that no captures will sound exactly the same as the models in the unit, and you can get so much variance just by going through different people's captures. In this shootout, I found that the Recto model in the unit is a lot fuzzier, a lot flubbier, and a lot thicker, while the capture of the Recto is more tight and more dry. Total side note, but I did notice there were some big omissions from the amp model list in the unit, such as orange. There are no actual orange models in the unit itself. There are orange captures, but not models that you can tweak the parameters of. When you factor in the capture aspect of this unit, it becomes less and less necessary to have all of your bases covered in the models. You can go onto the user cloud and type in pretty much any amp you can think of, and there will be someone who has set it up with their settings and uploaded a capture that you can just freely use. The only downside to this is that it's been captured at that one specific setting dialed into their tastes, and any tweaking beyond there is all done in post. With pedal captures, there's a lot less variance into how you can do them, so it's a lot more of a reliable thing to choose. The actual units themselves don't vary as much because there aren't as many parts going on as you would get in a real amplifier, and the capture methodology is literally just plugging in a cable from the QC into the pedal and then out from the pedal back into the QC. With that, I have done a capture of my 2000 Frantone era Big Muff. I won't do an A/B between my Big Muff and the capture, but I can say they are super close. I've also uploaded this capture onto my neural cloud, so you can add me on there at Kaidown Guitar if you'd like to download this one for yourself. The preset I've got set up to show off this Big Muff capture is very me. I've got the high watt DR103 model running into the ML SoundLab Mars TV impulse response. I've then just got the Big Muff running in front of it. Also, I really like how easy the capture process was. It was super quick, it had auto gain, it had all of the diagrams needed to plug everything in, just super simple. Now, one thing I'm not totally sold on is the plugin integration. It was touted as a major feature for the unit back when the unit was announced in NAMM 2020. The actual implementation feels kind of weird. It's almost like having paid DLC on top of a modeler that is already in the top tier of price points. Now, it certainly makes a lot more sense if you purchase the plugins prior to buying the Quad Cortex, which I'm sure is the case for many owners of this pedal. That said, once all of the plugins are compatible with the Quad Cortex, you're going to be looking at about €2,500 to get this unit at its maximum potential. Now, I understand that's an unrealistic expectation and no one's actually going to be going out and spending €2,500 just to pack out this unit with everything it can do. I think really it's just difficult knowing that there are extra goodies hidden behind a paywall. Thankfully, I haven't really felt the itch to purchase any extra plugins, but I'm definitely gonna get that itch when stuff like the laser from the Misha X plugin gets ported over, as well as the synth from the Rabea X plugin. I've got the collection of 3 Fulton plugins, and currently one of them is compatible with the Quad Cortex, the Nameless, so let's check that out. I'm just going to go for something super basic here because this video is already way longer than I thought it was going to be, so let's go for just an amp and cab from Nameless. Another thing that trips me up quite a lot is that the plugin devices are in a separate plugin category rather than just having the amp in the amp list and the cab in the cab list, but that's whatever. Also, for this preset, I've just quickly added in a noise gate afterwards because I expect this is going to be pretty high gain. I will normalize the volumes in post, but I can say that currently the output level is way off compared to the other presets that I've tried and all of the default blocks. Not sure what that's about, but I've needed to add 8.6 dB of output so that I can get it up to unity. I'll also add in a little clip of me playing through one of the 14 Nameless presets, which have all been ported over from the plugin, which is actually great for compatibility sake. Now, before I get into the conclusion of the Quad Cortex, I do want to quickly give a mention to my Discord server. I created this in collaboration with a bunch of other content creators, some of which you may be familiar with, and it's a great place to hang out and chat and talk gear and all that good stuff. You'll also find it's a spot where creators are sharing their presets, their IRs, and all that sorts of stuff. If you do want to join, there's a link in the description box down below. Now, it's worth starting the video by talking about the stock presets, as that's something that I spent a good amount of time with. They are really good stock presets, they're nicely varied, and they give a general sense of how the unit sounds, while also showing off some of the features. My only complaint on the presets is that there is a heavy reliance on stereo, stuff like stereo amps and doublers and that sorts of stuff. Everything's just panned super wide, larger than life, great big guitar sounds that are right in your face, and it is exciting for the first part, but you quickly start to feel like they sound a little bit fake. I'll show off one of the presets in particular that really demonstrates this. This is the 7H Doom United preset. It's not a bad sound by any means, it just does kind of feel a little bit fake. On to other things now, let's talk about the block list. While it's not as bountiful as something like the Fractal or the Helix, I do think it has all of the bases nicely covered, especially since the unit features capturing. I think this takes out the need for a great big overdrive list or a great big amp list, as lots of things can be sort of patched in from the cloud. More quirky things would definitely be appreciated though. We've got a couple of quirky reverbs and a couple of quirky delays, but nothing like the Helix and Fractal have. It's really easy to use this unit, but I don't think that's a surprise to anyone looking at this review. I mean, the pedal's got a giant touch screen, it's got a bunch of colourful units, it basically just looks like a phone screen and you can expect it to perform as such. All of the navigation features make a ton of sense. You tap the presets and it pulls up your presets. You can tap an empty spot and it will pull up the ability for you to add a pedal into that spot. It all works similar to a phone does, where if something's in focus, you tap outside of that and it unfocuses on that thing. There's also some nice quick access maneuverability things, such as double tapping a block to bypass it, or dragging and holding a block and taking it over to the bin to get rid of it. One thing that I haven't found yet that I'm actually hoping for some help on is quickly assigning blocks to scenes. Currently you have to go into every single block and then tap and hold on the power button for that so that you can assign it to a scene. I would love for this to just be done automatically. Most of the time you're going to want all of your effects assigned to scenes anyway. You can always just turn them off or leave them on or whatever. So let me know if I'm missing something there, because that feels like a big oversight. Future Kai here. I just swapped out guitars to do some of the playing clips, and I realized that I didn't talk about the tuner because my PRS has an Evertune. Since the pitch shifting in the Quad Cortex is so good, it's no surprise to see that the tuner also works great as a result. I do typically prefer a strobe tuner, and I will probably still use my Peterson Strobo Stomp as my main tuner, but it's nice to know that this one is really, really solid. Quad Cortex is a really good option if you're generally looking to have a bit more fun when you're dialing in guitar tones. It can be great to have a utilitarian device like the Fractal FM3, where it really feels like you're doing business when you dial in a preset. It's not as much fun because you're not playing around with stuff, but it gets the job done. I will say comparisons against the Helix are sort of out of the conversation now, with the Stadium release looming. I did try out the Helix Stadium at Guitar Summit and the touchscreen was an awful lot better than this. The QC screen has a tendency to lag, has some screen tears, and is generally a little bit bit less responsive. The Quad Cortex's screen is perfectly usable, but I wouldn't say it's particularly impressive. The Stadium touchscreen feels almost exactly like a phone. The DSP allocations are split between two different rows, so if you max out one row, you can just move everything down to the second row and free up some space. This is sort of what I was alluding to earlier with the gaps between presets. You can just build everything into a single preset and then swap between it all using scenes, so you don't really have to worry about it too much. While the I/O on this unit is pretty great, I'd say that it's missing a couple of things that are almost necessary at this point. The first of which being an IEC power supply rather than the proprietary one that they have currently. SPDIF or optical outputs would also be huge, as this would enable me to have lower latency when monitoring through my interface. Also, I would have liked to have seen USB-C connections rather than the chunky printer cable type connections we have here. I was glad to see that they switched over to the USB-C for the Nano Cortex. Also, as for the broken MIDI port on this unit, I did reach out to Neural about a repair, but it looks like it's going to be about £450 including shipping and tax. That sort of puts it way out of the realms of possibility for me, so I may have to consider going for a smaller tech shop here in the UK. I am a little bit worried about running this unit with no warranty whatsoever, because if anything were to happen to it, I'm pretty much out of luck now. I would say if you are going to buy one, it's probably better to spring for a new one rather than chance it with no warranty on a used one. Mainly because if anything were to happen, it is a very costly one to repair. That is all I've got for this video, so let me know what you thought of the Quad Cortex in the comment section down below. I'm excited to check it out in some future videos, maybe go deeper into the captures and things like that. If you did want to pick up one for yourself, please do so through my Tom Mann affiliate link, as it does give me a nice little bit of kickback and helps support the channel. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and until next time, I've been Kai.